let's just step back for a minute. We have a question from Dean in South Ockenden. So his question's about who owns what in our economy. So this is kind of looking at the issue of Brexit and the jobs in the economy from a very different angle. If Britain leaves the EU, will we be able to renationalise our kind of public and utility companies?
Well, it's a bit of a myth that the EU stops us doing that at all, right? In the last manifesto, the Labour Party pledged to renationalise the water companies and the national grid. And that was, as far as I can tell, and my lawyer friends suggest, would have been perfectly legal under EU law. So there are some constraints about how much you can interfere with competition in specific markets, which may make it, in some cases, harder to have a state-owned monopoly. But there's no EU law against nationalisation, and of course, we know this, right? I mean, the UK has a privatised railway system, but lots of continental countries don't have a privatised railway system. There's a German state railway, there's a French state railway. The idea that, the EU, and particularly the single market, does, operate to promote as a level playing field and fair competition. But the idea that it dictates that you have to have an extreme version of a free market economy any more than it determines that you have to have a highly bureaucratic regulated economy that doesn't allow for innovation or competition. These are two myths from opposite sides of the political spectrum. Neither of them true. In the EU you have Sweden, countries like Sweden, which have a much larger welfare state than we do, but actually quite a free market approach to large parts of the economy. You have countries like France that have a very large state sector. You have other countries that take Britain, which at least under Thatcher had a more liberal and free market approach. All of those are possible under EU law.
Okay.
So the idea that the EU really stops us pursuing, it does mean that there are quite a lot of constraints about exactly how we regulate the economy. But the idea that it stops us nationalising things is just not true.
That's a really helpful clarification, because that's been one of the kind of issues that's been debated a fair bit around what the kind of opportunities of leaving the EU are and what that would mean for things like the rail services.
Yeah.